Hey everyone, welcome back to Playing Quietly. My name is Ryan, and today I'm bringing you another Remnant 2 video. Today we're going to be discussing the most recent patch for Remnant, and there is quite a lot to get into. This is one of the bigger patches. So first up, we just have some performance fixes. They have updated to support FSR 3.1.1 and DLSS 3.7.2. And of course, these are going to be both PC only. Under the archetypes, we actually don't have a whole lot of changes. For the Engineer, they fixed an issue where Engineer and Warden summons were incorrectly applying pressure. The dev note here says that this issue was causing the turret and drone to take turns attacking. They fixed an issue where Impact Cannon and Hellfire were incorrectly applying pressure. For Invoker, they fixed an issue where casting and Invoker skills sequentially caused Communion to stop working. And for Medic, they fixed an issue where Medic Redemption skill Glow was not turning off and could visually stack. Now next up we have Gear and Weapons. This is a pretty massive section here, so let's get into it. The Repeater Pistol, they have increased the damage from 15 to 16. They have reduced the horizontal recoil. They reduced the vertical recoil, they reduced the recoil decay delay, and they've increased the overall accuracy. With a dev note here saying that the classic repeater was falling behind, even though with frame perfect input from the player it could deal a ton of damage. We lightened the dexterity requirement by increasing the damage slightly. Overall, much more attractive, much more accurate as well. Next up we have the Western Classic. They have increased the WS damage bonus from 105% to 110%. They have increased the reload speed. They have reduced horizontal recoil, reduced vertical recoil, reduced recoil recovery delay, and increased the accuracy. With a dev note saying weak spot damage bonus increase, reload speed bonus, and overall accuracy increase, yes please. The Western Classic always had great burst damage, but the buff to reload will boost the sustained damage as well. Next up we have the Service Pistol. They increased the magazine capacity from 10 to 12, increased the total ammo from 110 to 120, reduced horizontal recoil, reduced vertical recoil, increased overall accuracy, and reduced speed per shot. With the dev note reading, these are basically all quality of life changes. Service Pistol has always been a very high damage sidearm, but the magazine was a bit small. We increased it while also making the gun more accurate. Moving on to the Wrangler, they've increased the fire rate, reduced horizontal recoil, reduced vertical recoil, reduced spread per shot, reduced spread decay delay, and slightly increased the reload speed. With a dev note reading, properly befitting a true gunslinger, the Wrangler fires more quickly and can remain on target more easily. The overall damage increase is slight, but the handling adjustment should be noticeable for any fans of this lever action. Moving right along, we have the Huntmaster. They have increased the damage from 70 to 105. They have reduced the fire rate from 1.5 to 1.05. They've reduced the reserves from 49 to 35, reduced the horizontal recoil, reduced the vertical recoil, and a dev note reading a huge adjustment to the true hunting rifle. All changes lead to much higher burst and sustain, and the reduction in reserve was to help compensate to keep total damage in line. It is important to know that it still deals more total damage than it did before due to the per shot damage increase. Aim and be rewarded. Next up is the Tech 22. They have increased the damage from 8 to 10, reduced the rounds per second from 16 to 15, increased reload speed, increased magazine size from 30 to 32, increased total ammo from 330 to 355, increased min-max accuracy, reduced vertical recoil, reduced horizontal recoil, with a dev note reading, if you ever wanted a scalpel disguised as a pistol, today's the day. Next we have the SMG. They have increased the reload speed by about 18%, reduced horizontal and vertical recoil, increased the accuracy, and adjusted the reticle size. It's a bit smaller. With a dev note reading, quality of life changes, more accuracy across the board, the reload will help with the sustain, but burst remains the same. Next up is the Black Maw. They have increased the magazine capacity from 37 to 40, increased the total ammo from 190 to 200, reduced horizontal and vertical recoil. With a dev note reading, quality of life changes to allow Black Maw to remain a viable primary option in a sea of great alternatives. Damage is basically the same, but you can damage for a bit longer and stay on target much easier. Then we have the Chicago Typewriter. They have increased the fire rate from 11 to 11.75, increased reload speed by 15%, reduced horizontal recoil, increased reticle contraction per shot, increased accuracy at max reticle contraction, added 0.25 delay before spread enlarges. With a dev note saying, fires slightly faster and reloads more quickly. The reticle contracts quicker as well, so you can focus your fire sooner. Next up, we have the Bone Saw. They have reduced the heat per shot, increased heat decay rate. They have increased the overheat, I'm guessing animation play rate. They have increased the fire rate and increased the base reload speed by about 10%. With a dev note reading that with the heat adjustments, the LMG can now be fired for 75 rounds before overheating as opposed to the 50 before. Combined with small fire rate increase, this increases burst while the reload speed helps to increase the sustain. We also slightly reduce the penalty for overheating. Then we have the Coach Gun. They have increased the reload speed by about 18%, reduced the recoil per shot from 7 to 5. They have increased the ideal range from 15 meters to 16 meters, increase the fall-off range, and increase the accuracy. With a dev note reading, reload increased to up the sustain damage, minor quality of life adjustments to ensure you can hit stuff while moving. Then we have Ford's Scattershot. They have increased the fire rate, they have increased reload speed by about 5%, they've increased magazine capacity from 7 to 10, and increase the total ammo from 28 to 30. With a dev note reading, Ford doesn't play, and now neither do you. Next in line is the Bulldog. They have increased the fire rate from 2.5 to 3.5. They've increased the reload speed by about 5%. They have increased the fall-off range from 32 meters to 40 meters. Ideal remains at 10. They have reduced recoil per shot from 4 to 3.15. With a dev note reading, time to destroy anything that stands in your path. The goal here was to better convey the auto shotgun fantasy. You be the judge. And then we have the Sure Shot. They have increased the damage from 110 to 115, increased the weak spot bonus from 110 to 115, increased the stagger bonus from 10% to 20%, reduce the horizontal recoil, reduce the vertical recoil, increase reload speed, and more responsive fire after reloading. With a dev note reading, some changes to better reward accuracy and some accuracy changes to assist in putting the damage where it's most needed. This pocket sniper was already strong in certain builds and should stand out even more with the changes. After that, we have the Widowmaker. They have increased the damage from 125 to 150, reduced the recoil from 7 to 5, reduced the recoil speed from 100 to 75, reduced the horizontal recoil, slightly increased reload speed, and more responsive fire after reloading. With a dev note reading, a considerable damage increase to help the sniper rifle remain a viable one-shot damage option. Between the damage and reload increase, this weapon will be hitting hard and do it much more frequently. Next in line is the Crossbow. They have increased the damage from 120 to 125. They have increased the projectile speed. They have increased the reserves from 27 to 30, increased the ideal range from 23 to 26, increased the fall-off range from 70 to 75, increased the stagger bonus from 10% to 20%, and a slightly increased reload speed. With a dev note reading, with the Widowmaker increase, the crossbow also needed some love to allow it to remain enticing. It now hits a bit harder, can hit from farther, and can do it more often. The stagger was increased to help balance out the single shot nature. And of course after that we have the Trinity crossbow. They have increased the fire rate, reduced the recoil per shot, increased the projectile speed, increased the ideal range, increased the fall-off range, and a dev note saying the damage of Trinity was always decent, but getting the bolts where you wanted them was trickier than intended. Besides increasing the fire rate, we reduced the per shot recoil so more of your bolts can hit the intended target. The projectile speed increase will also help the bolts get to where you want them sooner. Then we have the Royal Hunting Bow. They have increased the perfect charge damage scaler from 1.7 to 1.8. They've increased the overcharge damage scaler from 1.4 to 1.45. And they have increased the stagger bonus from 5% to 10%. With a dev note reading, the Royal Hunting Bow was falling off a bit compared to some of the other options. This should bring it back up to par while still providing a bow that can use standard mods. Then we have the Bolt Driver. They've increased the pre-burst fire rate, increased ideal range from 17 to 18 meters, reduced horizontal recoil, reduced vertical recoil, with a dev note saying the changes to this weapon increase both the burst and sustained damage. The pre-burst fire rate is not the windup. It is the time after shooting, which happens between each shot, before the windup begins. What this means is that the gun recovers a bit faster between shots, thus increasing damage output. After that, we have the Repair Tool. They have increased the ideal range from 15 to 16 meters, increased heat decay delay, with a dev note saying minor quality of life changes to make the gun more than just a drone buffer. The heat decay allows the gun to cool down much faster between shots. After that is the Spore Bloom. They have increased the damage from 200 to 250, increased the reload speed from 1.25 to 1.35, reduced the max spread from 6 to 7, reduced the max spread from 6 to 5. They have fixed reticle visuals, was too large, with a dev note reading return to heavy hitter status. Next up is the Star Killer. They have increased the reload speed by about 15%, increased the overall accuracy, dramatically increased moving accuracy, Gravity Core increased base damage from 350 to 750, add damage from 250 to 500. They also fixed the suck/explosion range. It was previously halved, and they reduced the mod cost from 1,500 to 1,000. With a dev note reading, perhaps today is the day this thing actually kills some stars. Accuracy buffs for the primary to make it more appealing. The mod has gained significant damage buffs and is more likely going to kill you and your friends. We fixed a bug that was causing the range to show at twice as large as it was. The range is now as large as the original value said it was, which means we doubled what it was actually doing before. Next in line is Anguish. They have increased the reload speed by about 25%. They have increased the fire rate from 1.7 to 1.85. They've increased the primary shot projectile speed. They've increased the charge shot projectile speed. Loathe the Weak. They reduced low health bonus by about 17%. They increased the projectile speed from 6,000 to 7,500, and they increased the duration from 10 seconds to 15 seconds, with the dev note reading an overall boost to the primary functionality and a slight reduction to the maximum damage that Load the Weak deals. Very powerful weapon. Then we have the Rune Pistol. They have increased the weak spot damage from 100% to 105%. They've increased the pre-burst fire rate. They've increased the magazine size from 43 to 45. They've increased the total ammo from 168 to 180. For the mod, they reduced the cost from 850 to 750. They've increased the orb duration from 10 seconds to 15 seconds, and they have increased the healing from 20% to 25%, with the dev note reading a decent sidearm that was always hampered by the fact that it was generally considered to be primarily a healing option. The damage and functionality have been brought up to par, and the healing has been buffed as well. Next up, we have the Aphelion. They have increased the damage from 62 to 70. They've increased the reload speed by 7%. They've increased the magazine from 7 to 8. They've increased the total ammo from 49 to 56. They've reduced the fire rate from 2 to 1.85. And they have reduced the stagger penalty from -27 to -10. With the dev note reading a few minor quality of life changes to buff the overall DPS, and trash clearing ability should prove more versatile in more situations. Next up is the Monolith. They have increased the expose duration from 1 second to 3 seconds per application. They've increased the sustained fire requirement for expose from 1.25 to 1.65. For the mod, it no longer applies expose, and the mod reduced cost from 1,500 to 1,250. With the dev note reading, since Sandstorm was applying expose, it ended up making the primary fire irrelevant. We increased the duration that the primary fire applied expose and removed the application from the mod itself. It's much easier to ramp up expose using the primary. And now we have Nebula. They have reduced the dot duration from 15 seconds to 10 seconds. Damage remains the same. For the mod, they have reduced the base damage from 4 to 3. They have reduced the total duration from 15 seconds to 10 seconds. They have reduced the base dot damage from 65 to 50. They've reduced the dot duration from 10 seconds to 5 seconds, and they've reduced the cost from 1,250 to 1,000. With the dev note reading, like Monolith Sandstorm, the mod was outclassing the benefit of the primary fire in every way. As an applicator that grants a 10% damage bonus, we wanted to make a few adjustments that tone down the strength of the cast and forget swarm. With the reduced damage duration on the dot, it still deals more damage per second. The primary fire dot remains damaging and damages more quickly. For the cube gun, cube shield increased minimum damage from 40 to 60. They've increased the max damage from 200 to 300. They've reduced the mod cost from 1,000 to 500. And they've reduced the speed from 250 to 200. With the dev note reading only changes to the mod, the cube shield was traveling slightly slower and hitting considerably harder, both uncharged and charged. And last up for the weapons is the Black Greatsword. They've increased the base damage from 115 to 120. They have increased the charge speed from 0.5 to 0.33 per stack, and they have increased the damage per stack from 25 to 30. With the dev note reading, it takes guts to make a berserk change like this. Next up we have mods. They fixed an issue where Big Bang's mod's dot was scaling 10x when paired with the legendary Prism. They fixed an issue where healing effectiveness did not benefit Red Doe's Staff's Lifeline mod and the Spirit Healer Mutator. Then we have Astral Burst. They've increased the charges from 2 to 3. They've increased the damage from 35 to 70. Increased weak spot damage bonus from 75 to 85. They've reduced bounce bonus from 35 to 10. And they have increased the cost from 450 to 500. And they've reduced the initial spread. With a dev note reading that Astral Burst has been one of the weaker mods for quite a while, these tweaks should bring it more in line with a versatile damage addition to close range builds. Then we have Knight's Guard. They've increased the damage from 15 to 65. They've increased the duration from 20 seconds to 30 seconds. They've increased the cost from 450 to 1000. With a dev note reading, the Knights are here. Basically, we fixed a bug that was causing Knight's Guard to deal the default damage. Now it deals the proper amount. With a huge damage buff and a duration increase, we increase the cost to balance it out. Familiar, they've increased the duration from 15 seconds to 20 seconds, and they've reduced the cost from 1000 to 750. With the dev note reading, small balancing change to make this more appealing. Then we have Prismatic Driver. They have increased the beam damage from 25 to 125 DPS. They have increased the explosive damage from 150 to 300. They've reduced hits to explode from 6 to 4. They've increased the clear delay and increased the clear tolerance from 2 meters to 3 meters. With a dev note reading that Prismatic Driver was always meant to be somewhat of a weapon that works as an attachment to standard weapons. Huge damage increase. Clear delay represents time between hits, and clear tolerance represents distance in world that the shots can be apart. Next up is Rotted Arrow. They have increased the base damage from 75 to 110. They've increased the weak spot bonus from 125 to 150%. They've increased the AoE from 1.5 meters to 4 meters. They've reduced the direct hit AoE delay from 0.8 seconds to 0.5 seconds, and they've increased the cost from 400 to 500. With a dev note reading that a classic simple mod, the damage fell off compared to other more powerful options, should now be more competitive for more builds. After that, we have Concussive Shot. They've added explosive damage tag, and they have reduced the base damage from 155 to 150. With the dev note reading, new builds unlocked. Next up, we have Skewer 2.0. They have increased the impact damage from 125 to 200. They've increased the trap damage from 20 to 50 per hit, and they have reduced the direct hit AoE delay from 0.75 to 0.6 seconds. With the dev note reading the damage boost to bring Skewer back into the light. There is a hidden stagger modifier, which has always existed, that will now be more obvious with the higher damage. In addition, the trap damage is huge. Next up, we have Voltiac Rondure. They have increased the orb damage from 20 to 30, and increase the lightning range from 3 meters to 6 meters. With a dev note reading that upping the damage and range allows Voltiac Rondure to absolutely shred trash mobs, be sure to power it by shooting at it. Then we have Witchfire. They have increased the fire line damage from 55 to 150, and increase the fireline duration from 5 seconds to 10 seconds. With a dev note reading, well then. And finally, we have Voidlight. They fixed an issue where Voidlight was not working in some boss fights. They fixed an issue where Voidlight functionality was not matching the description. And they fixed an issue where Voidlight was allowing multiple explosion triggers to occur. With the dev note reading, we plan to fix some more typos instead of fixing this, but Chaos convinced us to make it work as intended. And apparently this says Merry Christmas. Next up for Trinkets, Mutators, and Relics. They fixed an issue where Tempest Conduit did not affect the damage of Superheated's Pulse AoE. They fixed an issue where a player in a group was able to obtain Prismatic Stone Blue. However, one of the players did not receive it, but could still not receive it when attempting again and would instead get scrap. And they have increased the range of Burden of the Divine, with the dev note reading, initially the range was a meager 10 meters, it is now 30 meters. And next up, what I'm sure we are all here for is Prisms. They have fixed an issue where prisms were not able to be cleansed unless they were maxed out, and what we are all hoping for, what we were waiting for, they have reduced the XP requirement to level a prism from 0 to 50 by about 50%, and they have reduced the XP requirements to level a prism from 50 to 51, the legendary bonus, by about 150%. With the dev note reading, this change brings back the original legendary EXP requirement. And now we have some buffs and nerfs for some of the legendaries. So first up we have Altruistic. They have increased the shared lifesteal from 30% to 50%, with a dev note reading that this change should allow players to create more powerful support / healing builds. Next up we have Critical Situation. They have increased the critical bonus from 25% to 30%. With a dev note reading, it's not too hard to get into the light armor class while still having lots of armor. For some builds, this may be more enticing than some of the other damage options. After that, we have Impervious. They have increased the damage resistance from 20% to 30%. With the dev note reading, it's almost like having a free armor set. Then we have Jack of All Traits. They have reduced the bonus from 45 to 40%, with a dev note reading, a slight nerf for an extremely powerful and well-rounded legendary option, great for any build. Then we have Master Killer. They have increased the bonus from 1.5 times to 1.3 times, with a dev note reading, a noticeable damage buff that will outperform the other damage options given the right build and good aim. After that we have Sadistic. They have increased the chance from 25 to 50% and increased the bonus from 50 to 100%. And a dev note reading combined with the Jack of All Trades reduction, this should make for a far more interesting choice. Jack may still be more enticing due to the all-around bonus, but if you are going pure status, you may want to give this a try. Up next is Sharpshooter. They have reduced the bonus from 75 to 60, with a dev note reading, one of the two most powerful options in the game. This reduction should keep it viable while not drowning out all the other choices. Players now have a more meaningful choice between Sharpshooter, Jack of All Trades, Spectrum, Master Killer, or even Critical Situation. Then we have Spectrum. They have increased the red bonus from 3% to 5%, all damage. They have increased the yellow bonus, 3 to 5% movement speed, with a dev note reading that players can now get a maximum of 45% all damage or 45% movement speed if they build a prism with entirely red or yellow. Even without building entirely into one color, the per color bonuses are considerably more valuable. Next up we have Speed Demon. They fixed an issue that was preventing Speed Demon from applying maximum speed bonuses, and a dev note saying, gotta go fast. Then we have Steel Plating. They have increased the armor from 100 to 150, with a dev note reading, this change brings the base armor DR value up to 42.9 from 33.3. Since it is pure armor DR, it's more valuable when you have less armor, and less valuable when you have more armor. And finally, we have Unbridled. They fixed an issue that prevented Unbridled from working with Engineer's high-tech Prime perk, with a dev note reading, while technically a Prime, we wanted to enable this like we did for other skill cooldown related elements. Next up we have some notes for Boss Rush. They fixed an issue where client would not be able to select a buff to upgrade. They fixed an issue where the client's results would show up as no status or name. They have reworked boss rush XP rewards for individual boss kills and full completion, with a dev note reading that players should gain considerably more experience in boss rush for killing bosses even without completing the run. Next up, we have some UI fixes. They fixed an issue where the "you are dead" screen persists and players didn't respawn at the last checkpoint after dying in pitfalls under fog/door arena entrances in Harvester mini-boss encounter. And they fixed several spelling mistakes. And lastly, we have some miscellaneous fixes. They fixed an issue where Spark was not rewarding crafted items to all players, with the dev note reading that we had applied a fix to this in the last patch, however, it wasn't completely fixed. Spark should be fully working now. They fixed an issue where the Ancient Canopy Sand Room could become inaccessible for clients. They fixed an issue where players could get stuck in a loop waiting for Meat Shake from Dwayne, with a dev note reading that if you have the chef's medal, you can no longer craft concoctions from Dwayne. The cooking quests are considered complete at that time. If you do not have a concoction he makes available on Mudtooth, you either need to join someone else's game, purchase it in their ward, and bring it back to your ward to unlock it, or find it in your campaign. Alright guys, so that is going to do it for the updates. There's definitely a lot to unpack here. I'm very curious to see how some of the weapons are going to be affected by this. Most notably Nebula. It's also interesting to see that they ended up nerfing some of the legendary prisms. But overall, I think there's a lot of really good changes here. I would still like to see them tweak a few aspects of the Prism system. So let me know what you guys are thinking. How are you guys feeling about this? Let me know in the comments below. But I think that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you found this video helpful or entertaining, hopefully I've earned your subscription. Don't forget to check back for more videos coming out all the time. But until then, we'll see you guys next time. Have yourselves a good one.